The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by The Last of the Giant Fire Lizards and the Vegas Beer Guys.
Everything Sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is a Dollars edition. Today, we're talking GBU. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, Tom Stewart from Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hello, Tom.
When you have to shoot, don't talk.
I didn't have a line. I realized your name just started spilling out of my mouth, and I didn't decide what man you were.
Oh,
well.
That's okay. Am I the good, the bad, or the ugly?
Yes.
What do we think?
I wrote that about our Clint impressions for our episode description.
I'm unwashed. I don't know if that puts me in the ugly camp. It's definitely not good.
I think of myself as unkempt.
The good, the bad, and the unkempt.
Yeah.
There you go. There's our sequel pictures. Right there.
Done and done. We just cut our recording in half.
Well, I mean, I wanted to begin with one of the movie's perfectly landed jokes.
Yeah.
Also,
I believe I read on IMDb notes that was an improv. How good is that?
it's great. I mean, it's also, I think it's also a great example of how these movies parody the conventions of westerns as well.
Yeah.
Because this, well, not just westerns, but I would say Hollywood cinema in general. The idea of the kind of avenging villain monologuing, which allows their victim just enough time,
to
fight back. I mean, this will be relitigated in Austin Powers about the James Bond movies later on, but this is 1964.
This is early.
So yeah, in 1964, that's a remarkable level of self-awareness about the conventions of popular cinema.
Agreed. Well, you mentioned it. I mean, we are talking the good, the bad, and the ugly. A 1967 film, possibly 1966 film, depending on where in the world you watched it.
Yeah.
But here in the States, December of 67, it's got 97%. What's that?
Christmas movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's got 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. Once again, I'll say that's revisionist history, because this movie, like the last one, was not well received, I believe, when it first came out.
Yeah.
Which is so fascinating to me because, on their face, they feel like pretty goddamn good movies, but
I think it was too early for movies that were this tonally complex.
Mm-hmm.
I think you get a very varied at that point. You get a very varied reaction.
Right.
I think you find similar reactions to like Bonnie and Clyde and Buffalo Bill and the Indians.
Sure.
Like, people don't really know what to do with that kind of disparity in tone and style that you see in the same movie.
Yeah.
But later film critics and later filmmakers have kind of embraced that ability to code switch.
Mm-hmm.
The way that these movies do. It's what Tarantino's all about.
Bringing it back to Beverly Hills Cop once again.
I think you can use code switching outside of the context of Axel F.
But it's funny when you just think about criticism in general, or say weekend box office, and how important good reviews and a hot start on Thursday night tickets seem to count for what we think in the moment of a movie. And I've heard several different anecdotes from several different people, but the one that I remember was somebody complaining to Warren Beatty about, their weekend movie tanking, and he said, you know what? It doesn't even fucking matter. It takes 10 years for you to figure out if you made a good movie.
Sure.
Because in 10 years, you'll know if it's still something that people are watching and talking about.
Yeah, and I wonder how many classics are being written off as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
In favor of those movies that are deemed acceptable to the critical community now. Although, Instagram comments count just as highly as reviews these days, so maybe it's not even a fair comparison. I just saw a promo for Suits LA, and it was just literally just quotes from people on Instagram going, yes, like that, and variations upon that, and I'm like, presumably that's because no one in the critical community is excited about the return of Suits LA.
Yes,
but the whole
right,
reason
right.
that there is a Suits LA is because a lot of people watched it when it was available on Netflix.
Well, once again, of course, directed by Sergio Leone, and we've already discussed his limited but excellent career.
Yeah.
The highlight being these three movies. This particular film, a budget of $1.2 million. That's incredible when you think about the length and the scope of this movie.
Well, it is, unless I suspect they put all that money into the Civil War.
Civil War moment, yeah.
Yeah. Which is intriguing, and we'll get there, but...
Because I think that's double the money we said for the last movie.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find a opening weekend number, but in the USA, $25.1 million, and in the world, $25.2 million.
Ooh, okay. Yeah, well, it's always... I guess the other aspect to taking a while for a movie to work can be cultural as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a roll of the dice when you're trying to sell a country's image of itself back to it. Like if you think about, the Beatles were reimagining rock and roll as Britons, but they were kind of, they were essentially showing Americans what rock and roll was after, years of them having forgot what made it so good.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some great, don't get me wrong, there's some great Hollywood westerns in the 60s, but they're few and far between, and it's a kind of dying genre at this time. So
right,
it needed a shot in the arm like these movies, but Americans especially might not have recognized it as the kind of western that they wanted, or
sure,
that was kind of an American tradition at the time. But years later, you look back and you go, if we didn't have this intervention, the western might not be around anymore, even less than it is.
Yeah, right.
The three westerns that are made over a 7-year period might not be made. So Horizon might have only been one part,
Looks like it still might be.
Oh, is that second one not come out yet?
No.
Oh my god, wasn't it supposed to come out almost immediately?
It was supposed to come out, I think, a month or two later. But the poor box office kind of put it on hold. And I think meanwhile, he's already filming the third chapter.
So it's just sitting there, unreleased?
Yeah. I don't know.
Wow.
Seems crazy, right?
Well, probably, I'm making a lot of assumptions here, but better films have sat, unreleased for longer.
Sure.
But I guess it's a narrative now, isn't it? With Batgirl and Coyote versus Acme, and I think it's going to get to the point where like half the films that are made are not going to get... There was a time when Megalopolis didn't look like it was going to get a release either.
Yeah, right.
And probably shouldn't have, but...
Meanwhile, the one everybody was going nuts about online was Batgirl.
Yeah.
Well, this movie, once again, opens up with the classic, at least for me, I don't know about you, but classic MGM logo.
Sure.
And then Your comment about popular art at the time seems to be most present in these credits.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean he's doing the Andy Warhol pop art portraits of Lee Van
Absolutely.
Cleef and Eli Wallach and Clint Eastwood. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that's exactly his portrait of celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
The Marilyn and the Elvis. He's kind of doing that with these. I mean, all of them to some extent are icons of the Western at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, Clint more in TV terms, but Eli Wallach was Calvera in The Magnificent Seven
Right.
5 years before, and that's kind of enough to cement his place in movie Western.
In the genre.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I just wonder, what's the dialogue here? Is it, is Leone aware of what Warhol's doing, or are they just kind of both doing very similar work independently?
Right.
Difficult to say.
I'd love to hear. I'd love it if those two were on the phone talking to each other. I like that idea.
Andy Warhol's like, as long as it's not a soup can.
Yeah, you're
the
good.
soup can is mine.
What if it's a laughing Eli Wallach? You're good. You're good.
Yeah. But even before that, you had this combination, I think, of modern art and then popular culture, because it's kind of like the modern artist take on Western printing and photography as well. The way the kind of dust moves in and is scattered across the image,
Right.
and of course what we now know as the playbill font, which is presumably has some historical precedent in Western printing and photography.
Sure.
But that's how you find it on Microsoft Word now. And so we're kind of up in the ante a little bit because we got a cannon shooting the horses now.
Mm-hmm.
So we've gone from
You
from
got that
rifles
sequel
to cannons.
upmanship.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's also the style of these titles different from the last movie, and also revolutionary in its own way. It's like photo montage meets animation.
Yeah.
Really interesting, kind of, almost Terry Gilliam-esque kind of using still images as animation.
Mm.
Without a giant foot coming down, squashing everything, but similar. It's funny how often I thought of Python when I was watching these two movies, especially this one. I think that kind of says a lot about, again, just the sort of the zeitgeist of shaking up convention
Right.
in the way that you do art, which is kind of common to Python and Leone and Warhol.
Fantastic.
End of sentence. Anytime it's funny because anytime I talk about modern art, you're leaving more and more of a pause as if I'm going to go on, and I realize that's my fault because I do generally go on.
You
so
do
I'll
generally go on more. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah. As an
learned to
enthusiast
just
of
take a breath and let you go on.
as an enthusiast of mid-century modern art.
Well, I got to tell you though, in the first seconds of the actual narrative, I had a huge laugh, and I'm wondering if you made the same connection because these three baddies come in to get one Eli Wallach, Tuco, and he just straight up does a Jason Voorhees window jump.
Yes, I didn't even think about that. He invented the Jason Voorhees window jump. Of course, yeah. Well, I mean, everything. I don't know. Do you want to take a second to talk about the music now, or I mean, you could.
That's a fair question. Yeah,
I mean,
it's from the jump, right? So
yeah, it's from the jump, and I think what struck me this time. Obviously, I've seen this movie many times. I've listened to this soundtrack probably even more times. Just the musical styles in this one score are kind of endless, really. You've got jazz, rock, choral, country, orchestral, Latin, I don't think.
If you say so.
I don't think. I don't think music was as culturally and stylistically diverse back then. Certainly, movie soundtracks weren't.
Yeah.
So, I'm just kind of amazed by the range of musicality in there.
Yeah, but I will say, I just can't speak to music in the way that you can, but I can say how it makes me feel, and it does feel like you're kind of lassoed yourself, and you're just being brought in.
Yeah.
On the music itself, and it just draws you in immediately.
And it's compelling, and it's also really eclectic as well. And I think that the eclecticism of the music is a big part of accepting the eclecticism of the movie too. The fact that it's a movie that's not going to leave you alone and get comfortable with it at any point. It's going to keep changing styles, changing tones, and I think the music presents that as much as these opening visuals as well. But and again, that I mentioned this in the last episode with the. They always begin the movie proper after the titles with a piece of diegetic sound that matches something done musically in the titles.
Oh, and yeah, I remember. Yeah,
yeah, and when the movie starts, you hear a coyote go really distinctly, and it's like it's literally like, you know, where the interchange of non-diegetic sound into diegetic sound. It's just it kind of becomes one at that point. I mean, I'm laughing from the moment the movie starts, because you don't expect that face to just abruptly come into close up as it does. There's a shock factor behind it for sure. Yeah. But I mean, you know, this is Leone setting out his campus, isn't it? His landscape is the human face as much as it is these giant vistas behind them. He does as much work on the human face as he does on scenery. In fact, I'd say the face is more scenery than the backdrop, almost. But I mean, just that sort of subversion of expectation about what you're going to see. Like, you're looking at this vista in the background, but it doesn't let you enjoy it.
Sure,
right. And it's, you know, and it's not just a face. It's a notably craggy and complex face that's coming into frame. It's also not an easy face to look at, especially that closely. So to me, it's one of the great opening shots of any movie.
Mm-hmm.
Just what it does and what it challenges you to think about as a viewer.
All right, then.
As well as like the visceral factor of shit. It's a face.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a face.
And, you know, he's got these glistening eyes, and they're telling the story once again. You know, you keep cutting back between what he's seeing and then back onto his eyes, and it's like turning the POV back and forth on itself to tell the story, and it narrates everything you need. Well, that you think you know about the sequences. It's going to subvert that in a moment as well. In another kind of great twist on Western conventions, that, you know, you think they're heading towards each other, for a gunfight, but they're in fact the same gunfighters, and they're going in to get
someone else.
Yeah. So I think it's beautiful, and then, you know, the again, one of the great screen entrances, Tuco jumping out of a window with I don't even know. I know he's got the leg of an animal. I've never been able to work out what it is.
Chicken, turkey, what's going on there?
I thought it might even be a cow's leg.
Really?
I guess it could be a pig's leg as well.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if it was pork, because he calls everyone pigs in the movie. And he's got a bib on as well. That's the other part of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's all of this is unexpected and hilarious. This opening scene.
Well, and also because, speaking to the sort of reinvention aspect, the introduction of the characters, because he stops, you know, we freeze frame.
Yeah.
And we're going to meet the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah.
in a specific way for each of them, which is, terribly interesting. But this first one, that freeze frame on Dooku, I got a second laugh in as many seconds,
Yeah. Well, and they the introductions are done backwards and unevenly as well, because this is like a couple of minutes of screen time.
Mm-hmm.
And they get progressively longer as they go on,
Right.
and eventually combined they last about half an hour. So again, the movie's not. It is constantly challenging you to reinterpret what it is, and what its style is, and how it's structured. It's magnificently done. Yeah, well, and then we go to our second introduction of 3.
And
just to say,
the first thing we see is that kid from
Yeah.
the first movie, or
Yeah. So, no,
Yeah.
well, Fistful of Dollars, yeah. But post-pubescent now.
Mhm.
He's about 3 feet taller. And, well, I mean, this is because, I wrote Mortimer First Legacy character to return, but he's got a different name. And
right,
he very much seems like a different person.
different
altogether.
person. Yeah.
And, it's quite interesting because they've sort of... Mortimer was I think we talked about Mortimer was a kind of play on both sides of Van Cleef as a handsome leading man and a heavy.
Yeah.
But he's pure heavy here, like he's a straight villain.
Well, it's funny too because when he sits down at the table, and again, I mentioned this before, but it's been a long time since I'd seen these movies, and so I just remember him sitting down and thinking to myself, "Oh yeah, he's different in this movie, isn't he?" And
Well, he's different. But yeah,
but
he's different.
it was very funny because I remember trying to convince myself that surely he won't kill this man or any other members of his family. And not so much.
It's a complete inversion of he's the victim of this violence in the last movie.
Right.
Now he's the one bestowing it. He's El Indio now.
Yeah.
He's doing what El Indio did to his family.
Yeah. And it's funny too because I called it the dinner stare down when he's just looking at that guy for a while.
Yes.
And look, it's all purposeful, and I understand what Leone's doing, but I also wrote down, I think I know why this movie's 3 hours.
It's not 3 hours though, as we've established.
It is.
AMC made it 3 hours.
Well, yeah.
In 2003.
The one I watched, 3 hours.
Well, that's not the correct version. Yes. But there's a couple of things here. I mean, the purposeful part of it, the act of eating, again, like telling the story through domestic rituals, which this movie will do again later in different ways. And also this kind of invasion of home spaces and the security of that. Which is
I love that long shot when he first walks in from into the doorway, and love that shot.
And I guess the changing of the guard in terms of what the movie's about in MacGuffin terms. They've gone. El Indio was essentially the MacGuffin of the last movie, and now it's a case of coins that we're following.
Yes, but at the same time, when he's coming in, he's saying, "I want the name of the alias of the man."
Yeah, exactly.
So
That's
it does
what I mean.
feel hooked into the last. He still feels kind of like a bounty killer out for his man, and so you have this feeling of like, is it still a just thing he's going for? Oops, no, I guess not.
No. Yeah, well, that's it.
He killed that man.
And that gives you the plausible deniability that he's still Mortimer, right?
Yeah.
Because he's sort of, and then and also there's a certain, there's a realism about bounty hunters in the West kind of trying to get their mark. Whereas Treasure Hunt is a bit more elaborate. It's a bit more fantastical, I think, that they're on, that it's like a pirate story. It's kind of becoming a pirate story on dry land, really.
Yeah.
They're looking for a dead man's chest, essentially, quite literally looking for a
Right.
dead man's chest. And then some amazing. I mean, first of all, I don't know how they hold any food in those spoons that they have throughout these movies. They're completely flat. They're like they're just these level spoons. It doesn't hold any, especially because they seem to be always eating some kind of stew.
Yeah.
And all you can see them pick up as like a piece of cabbage ever.
Yeah, but
There's
I
nothing
made a
else.
note that Leone seemed really interested in food at the beginning of this meal because we see sort of a close up on the stew and you could just see the steam rising off of it.
Yeah.
And it just felt like he
That's the
wanted
story,
this
right?
world, to be really lived in.
And then the fainting wife, the amazing point of view
Yeah.
expressionism of the camera collapsing as she faints. So again, those experiments with point of view with the camera which are really, really interesting.
Well, I'll tell you what I found interesting was him going to the guy who was paying for the name next.
Yes, Prob Baker.
So,
The guy he was working for, yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can't remember that it really kept playing into the rest of the movie, but I found at the beginning, because clearly by now I know that this is a un-Mortimer-like character and we're dealing with a different dude.
Yeah.
But
He's got it, and he's called Angel Eyes as well, so.
right. But he does seem, in this moment, he seems to have his own code. Because it wasn't that the guy had said something to him. When he says the bit about, I always carry out my, whatever my last job was. But when he seems to have read the man's mind for him. And, I mean, maybe all of that's just a hoax because he wants to
I think so.
get the shit that he wants anyway. But I
think,
found that
again, it's
slightly interesting that it seemed up for debate at the time about... I just thought he was going to have more of a code that would play into the movie later. That didn't seem to really come back, but...
Well, no, I think, and I think you're right about all of that, and I think the purpose of that is again to sort of manage your expectations. That this could still be Mortimer, but at the same time, within the scene, he transforms from one character to another. So the idea that he has a moral code. We know Mortimer has a moral code, and Angel Eyes also has a moral code, but it's an amoral code.
Yeah.
Because his code means he kills twice as many people
Yeah,
as he
right.
strictly needs to.
Right.
So it's literally they're literally kind of like turning the character on its head as you watch in real
Sure.
time. So I think that's what they're sort of going for here. And again, just the shock factor of that choice, that the inevitability of that violence. It's not even he's not making a choice to kill him. He's just delivering a service that has already been kind of prepaid.
Yeah, right.
And then the return of Clint as
Yes.
Blondie.
But we do
Again.
get our still frame of the bad.
The bad, yes. New costume, who dis? Is what I
Yeah.
wrote.
That's what I wrote.
Yes,
I think I wrote down, he doesn't have his hat yet.
Well, the yeah.
And
again,
later in my notes, I'll put down, he got his hat.
Yeah. So I was going to say the poncho gives way to the trench coat, but maybe it's the other way around. Maybe
Yeah,
the trench
right.
coat gives way to the poncho. Because he puts the poncho on at the end, as if that could be the first time he's ever put the poncho on.
Yeah.
And then he, rides off to the village from Fistful of Dollars. But the trench coats, I think, are... trench coats are in as far as Leone's cinema goes from here, because Once Upon a Time in the West is very, very
Trench coat heavy. Yeah.
And then, of course, he does Once Upon a Time in America, which is legitimately you're gonna get you're gonna get a lot of trench coats in that period of American history. So I feel it's as much keeping up with the style of the director as the style of the actor and character. But I mean that's I realized, because I saw this at a formative age, that look kind of really influenced my idea of fashion.
Oh, wow.
I frequently buy shirts that look like the one Clint's wearing, and I had like long, not trench coats, but kind of longer brown coats that I used to wear, and it can't be a coincidence.
Yeah.
But he looks damn good. Like he looks as
Oh, yeah.
stylish as maybe Clint has ever looked. Aside from the wife beater he wears in Every Which Way But Loose. But
I was gonna say Every Which Way. Yeah.
oh, and here the thing that strikes me is the something that again is very progressive, very advanced. The art of the hard cut joke, right? This is something we talk about in modern comedy a lot. But going from firstly the cut of Tuco to him on the horse,
Yeah.
and then soon after that you have you once you figured out that this is a game that they're running.
Mm-hmm.
There's like I think it's a kind of reverse wipe is
it
like
a
a
Star Wars wipe?
It's kind of looks like a Star Wars wipe that they do, which goes to cuts to Tuco back on the end of the noose, and it's like, oh, this is the hard cut comedy.
I definitely wrote down great hard cut joke.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I mean, and I think that's a modern comedic movie art form that is kind of, I don't know if started here, but certainly formative. Yeah. And again, we're sort of taking Clint from Monko to Blondie, because Monko's a bounty hunter. He seems like a bounty hunter, but by the end of this introduction, it's going to reveal that he's kind of a frontier con artist.
Yeah.
So, again, they're changing your expectations, but they're also kind of feeding those expectations at the same time. It's a really interesting kind of character game that they're playing with all these characters, I think.
Sure.
They're playing with what we know about them in order to turn them into different characters.
Yes.
Which you don't see in a lot of movies.
Right.
Because it confuses the audience, I think would be the idea. Someone would put a note in your screenplay saying, please don't do this, it will confuse our audience. There'll be whole podcasts devoted to who these characters are and whether they're the same people or not.
Right.
This is where I started making notes about Eli Wallach's performance, which is, I mean, I think one of the best performances on film.
Eli?
Yeah, I don't know if it would be without the kind of midsection, sort of outside-inside inversion that they do with the character. But when you look at the range of what he does across the movie, and, the comedically pitched performance that he begins the movie with.
Sure.
Which the screenplay is also buying into, because there's the reading of the list of crimes when he's on the end of the noose.
Oh,
so funny, and then it gets longer.
Yeah,
and like the next time he's on there, it's like almost a third longer when he gets
different
there,
territories have different rap sheets.
It's again, it's a very modern kind of performance. The idea of the extreme character.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of characters that Nicolas Cage will eventually end up
mm-hmm.
playing.
Yeah.
These characters who are almost kind of too big to be human. They're just completely larger than life.
Sure.
And I think he captures that so well. I mean, I've always been curious about Eli Wallach, because he sort of seems to me, he's one of that generation of method school actors who seem to be hammier and more mannered in their performances than the performers that they came into the profession to replace.
Right.
Like Brando's the same, James Dean's the same, extremely mannered acting, posing as a kind of realism, which I've never really understood. But some of that training pays off when later on in the movie, when he has to kind of turn Tuco in his head, and you find out that all of this is kind of rooted in economic insecurity and
family,
in a traumatic childhood.
Yeah.
and a dickhead brother. So I think it's
you thought
it's
that
magnificent.
priest had that punch coming, huh?
So I just think, you know, it's remarkable what he kind of pulls off here, and I never really I've never really seen this again with Eli Wallach as well. This was like a once in a lifetime performance that whenever you see Eli Wallach in other movies, like, oh, too much, too little. This is the sweet spot for me. This is where he gets to indulge all of his vices as an actor in a way that only makes the movie better.
Sure.
I think.
I like Eli Wallach in Tough Guys.
His craziness is the movie's craziness, you know. Oh, and I think we alluded to this in the last episode, but the dissection of capitalism with the inflation of the reward money.
Of the reward? Yeah.
Yeah. They're like frontier stockbrokers. They're just trying to manipulate the market.
Exactly.
The bounty market, right? So it works for what they want, which, you know, is dangerously close to what the stock market's like now. So
sure,
it's not reassuring that they're kind of doing the same. They're still involved in the same practices. But I love, in terms of his acting, that bored look he has on the noose when they do the Star Wars wipe and it cuts to him. He's got this bored, irritated look as they read the crimes.
The hard cut, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's such a great piece of dark comedy. I mean, literally gallows humor, but
right,
also very specific to the character and where
he
is in the movie. That he does this like once a week, maybe.
I will not have this on my neck for very long. If only they knew.
And then we kind of get our first evidence that this is going to be more of a historical Western film, because we meet a legless
soldier. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's sort of like the Civil War kind of creeps into the movie. And I mean, it remains background but I think the movie becomes progressively more concerned and interested in and with it. But
we are supposed to be in Texas, right?
Sure. I mean, I never really asked myself that question, but yeah. Okay. I mean, there's at least a sense that the army's always kind of moving through.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying this is a document of a historical document of the Civil War, but I feel like it's their backdrop to the story. But they never let it interfere in the telling of the story.
Yeah, right.
It's and you know, I think up to the point when we actually get to the battle, and even then, the story is kind of still moving through the kind of backdrop of the Civil War.
Sure, yeah.
And especially here, because we only see this guy because he's got information to sell,
right?
To Angel Eyes, so it's not holding anything up at this moment.
Because he's still looking for the guy with the alias. I'm excited to get to that part, but
yeah,
I'll save it.
And yeah, it's kind of interesting because this is where they talk about his protecting Angel.
Mm-hmm.
It's Carson's protecting Angel, and they see Angel Eyes, and so there's a recognition between Clint and Van Cleef. But you don't know if that's the recognition between Mortimer and Monco.
Yeah, exactly.
You entirely different recognition between two other characters who also know each other.
Yeah.
It's like having your cake and eating it. It's completely neutral, completely ambivalent as to what you're supposed to take from that scene.
Right.
And then, you know, we're still in introduction territory. So this is where we get the good.
The good, yeah.
We find out that Clint is the good, and interestingly, not one of his, not one of his good moments.
I was gonna say, I love that we find out that he's the good when he lets Tuco go on a 70-mile walk back to town and possibly die in the middle of a desert.
At his most sadistic, he is the good.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's ironic and it's satirical as well. It's sort of like this is as close as you get to morality on the frontier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, first half hour is introductions, but such a bigger canvas than For a Few Dollars More and Fistful of Dollars here. It's expanding as the movies goes on. Not least because we've introduced the idea of the Civil War as a backdrop, but 3 characters instead of 2. More screen time spent with and on them. It's self-consciously more of an epic movie, I think. And the first half hour kind of defines what that is for you.
I just had a flashback of, granted it wasn't you saying it, you were quoting somebody else. I know I don't like David Lean. I was about to blame you and say, how can you reconcile loving this film so much? But that was somebody else's quote and not yours. Although I did get the idea you're not the biggest fan.
No, not of his epic movies, no. I'd much rather watch a movie like this on that scale than a Lawrence of Arabia or a, God forbid, Passage to India. Mind you, they both got their brown face.
Yeah, of course.
Called it one of the greatest performances in cinema, and singularly failed to mention that it is a brown face performance by Eli Wallach. But it's in reference to.
You were leaving that part out conveniently, I noticed.
I was, yeah, but it also was in The Magnificent Seven as well. So if that's the reference point, that's the reference point is racist. It's not racist.
I don't know why, because it doesn't actually apply to this film. But when I think of this movie and I think of Eli Wallach in brown face as Tuco, I also always think of John Travolta in Get Shorty, because I just rewatched Touch of Evil the other night.
Yeah. So
when he's talking to Rene Russo and says, well, you want to go see Touch of Evil? We can watch Charlton Heston be a Mexican.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow I also supplant this movie with that as well. Like he could have
they're
just as easily said that.
They're less than 10 years apart. I mean,
yeah.
It's easy to say it was a different time, but it was a different time. And we know it was wrong, but it was also a reality. Blackface, brownface.
I guess what's interesting to me about this particular choice is Eli Wallach in his own life, like he just seems the furthest removed from Mexican culture. So
yes,
it's just the oddest of oddball choices.
It really is, and I think that's partly the point. He's the last person you'd be expecting to play. Well, I don't know. I guess once he plays Calvera in Magnificent Seven, I guess, because this role is in reference to that. I think it's a deconstruction of that. In that he's a full on villain. Here he's like the anti-hero version of Calvera.
Yeah,
where he has some redeeming qualities, and he's kind of a loose cannon out on his own.
Kind of.
Well. Literally. And he has a loose cannon.
I love those moments where, coming up in a bit, where he's like ruining his own choices. When he realizes that his lust for trying to kill Clint in the desert, he's like, oh, I need you. We're brothers.
Yeah,
Come on.
Yeah. Do we want to take a break before or after the beaten prostitute?
No, yeah, I was just gonna say, I think this is a perfect place to take a break, and then we'll come back.
That is the question, because you can't get too far into a Sergio Leone movie without some kind of sexual violence towards women.
I was gonna say why don't we save the beaten prostitute for when we come back? We can really get into it.
We don't want to.
Don't want to skip on that. I don't want to go over it quickly.
Actually, I do, because it makes me think less of the movie, so I do want to skim over that, but I feel it would be unfair to our 2025 audience to do so.
Exactly. All right, we're going to take a break, and you're listening to some of the best music ever, so you should be happy, and we'll be... It's called The Last of the Giant Fire Lizards. When her nest is destroyed and her forever mate slaughtered, Zephyr Ignitus, the last of an ancient breed of fire-breathing dragons, gathers together a team of saber-toothed panthers, woolly mammoths, and a crew of howler monkeys, brandishing swords and weapons stolen from the ships of men, all to hunt down and scorch the evil beast-killing wizard that did her wrong. The Last of the Giant Fire Lizards is a fast-paced, R-rated comedy under the cloak of an epic, rip-roaring fantasy adventure. Set in a land of fire and magic, it follows the dragon on her quest for vengeance as she visits strange new cities and mystical places, all to hunt down and slaughter a demented sorcerer that slayed her mate and blew up her mountain. The Last of the Giant Fire Lizards can be found in ebook, paperback, and audiobook. Try and find it on Amazon or on Kindle. That's The Last of the Giant Fire Lizards. Find it wherever you get the good books just as soon as you can. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing the USA released 1967 film, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, directed by Sergio Leone. All right, let's talk about beaten prostitutes.
Yeah, and looking back
This
at my
is
notes...
Carson's sister?
Oh, is it? I didn't pick that up. Yeah, I think it is, which is another interesting inversion because...
Or maybe not his sister, but his woman. That's what I meant to say.
Oh, okay. If it was his sister, then that would be literally an inversion of Mortimer.
Mm-hmm.
So it might be his sister. It might be his sister. Yeah, and needlessly thrown off that horse cart, needlessly slapped around by this is Leone's always been difficult to read on this because violence towards women reads as violence towards women in all its ugliness, but at the same time there's a sense he's enjoying it far too much.
Yeah.
And there's just no way to reconcile that when you watch his movies. And you haven't even seen Once Upon a Time.
I know, yeah.
So you only getting a glimpse of what I'm talking about. It gets worse as his career goes on, not better.
In that opium den?
Yeah, that 40-minute sequence in the opium den. Or whatever it is. Which,
Every single time I go to watch that movie, I'm almost about to hit play and I'm like, 4 hours? Ugh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Doesn't feel like 4 hours.
All right.
Feels like a 3:35.
Oh, perfect.
No, it's still well worth watching. Just watch it like a cereal.
Like Frosted Flakes?
Yes, like Frosted Flakes. Watch it like a mini-series.
Yeah, just an hour at a time.
What it is. Yeah, it's essentially what it is. The whole different cast when they're younger, so... Anyway.
All right.
We'll be speaking about gangster movies in a moment as well. But Eli Wallach, coming out of the desert, very biblical imagery of, Jesus in the wilderness.
Yeah.
And not for the last time in this movie. When it's even more Jesus-y when he does it to Clint later on in the movie. Because he's very much the devil fucking with Jesus in the wilderness in that scene. But, again, that Catholic education, the idea of
right.
Bible stories with bad people. So it's it's kind of interesting that imagery always kind of pops up again and again. And then the gun store, it's kind of a general store, but it has guns.
I mean, I know I already mentioned it, but I could watch that. I could watch Eli Wallach walk through that store for the full 3 hours. I would have been so happy.
And the reference, and it's another classical Hollywood reference, because the scene is taken from James Cagney in The Public Enemy.
Yeah, right.
The scene where he goes in and he pretends to be a customer interested in buying a gun, and he ends up kind of loading it and then holding it up. But he does it. He's trying to fool the store owner
shopkeeper
into thinking he's a customer.
Yeah.
There's no pretense. Eli Wallach has no pretense.
That's one of my favorite things about the scene, though, because whoever that guy is, his scene partner in this particular scene is fantastic.
Yeah.
Because he's wearing sort of the frontier situation all over his face.
Yeah.
because he wants to close his door and lock it. He's like, we're closed right now.
Yeah.
And he just sort of barges in anyway. And then you can kind of read on his face, well, I might be able to sell a $20 gun. and it's not easy making money in this town. So I think and then as he's like shuffling shit off the fucking counters and pushing it onto the floor, and you just have this sense of that's not an uncommon occurrence. Like, oh God, again.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So everything that's going on within it, between the two, and all of it, almost all of it, unspoken.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
really,
an attitude, isn't it, from both of them?
Yeah. It's just delightful to watch. It's amazing. All the way to
There's
where
no
he starts shooting the gun out in the back.
Yeah.
When the guy thinks he's actually finally gives him the raised eyebrows, that he actually missed one. Oh.
And it's great. I think that moment when for a second you think he's gonna
shoot that guy. That's what I
well,
thought.
you always think that's what's gonna happen, but he sort of says, he says how much,
right?
And the guy's like first reaction is like to kind of quote the price of the gun.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, how much have you got that I can steal?
Yeah.
In addition to the gun that I'm taking.
Hands it over.
Because it's a reference to it.
Also, because he doesn't give
scene.
all of it at first, does he? He gives
no
portion of it. That's great.
It's kind of, but it's like a done in a knowing, deadpan way. That's a kind of comment on that scene as well.
Yeah,
which is a very postmodern thing to do. Yeah, and the slow pacing justifies itself because it's the reason the scene is so good.
Yeah, and I know I mentioned this in our ranking episode, but again, Eli Wallach didn't really know anything about guns, but some gunsmith had taught him how to put guns, like to take the barrel off and that kind of thing.
Wow.
And so all of that was just improvised by him, the whole thing, which is incredible to me.
You see, that I don't know, that's where the sort of the method stuff kind of pays off to me. It's not in that they supposedly find the depths of the character.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of that play with objects, like at the beginning of One-Eyed Jacks, where Marlon Brando's robbing a bank while eating a banana.
I haven't seen One-Eyed Jacks.
Well, that's how he's introduced to you in the movie, in the middle of a bank robbery, and he's just sat there eating a banana, and seconds before he went, Brando just picked it. Well, he was the director of that movie as well, so he probably was like, I'm going to take this banana, and I'm going to eat it, and I checked with the director, because he's me.
That fucking cat wasn't supposed to be in the scene. He just found that cat.
Or like James Dean with the monkey toy at the beginning of Rebel Without a Cause.
Rebel, yeah.
Like, all this stuff, this great prop work they do. They're essentially the Actors Studio was just a training ground for prop comedy.
Right.
They are the Carrot Tops of their generation. Oh, did you notice one of there's a crate in the background, and the name of the company is Acme.
I don't think I noticed.
It's like Acme, whatever.
But that's fantastic.
Now, is that a Looney Tunes reference, or it made me think?
I don't know. Yeah, that was the question I was just about to ask.
Or was everything? Was it like 555 in phone number?
Right.
If you didn't have a real company,
you called it Acme.
I wonder.
Well, you noticed. You should have looked it up before we got on air.
I should have done, and maybe I will for a poster episode.
All right.
Yeah, and the slow. So and it's also great comedy because it's the slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's robbing a store, but rather than play it as violent and aggressive, it just gently rolls towards the inevitability of him.
Give me all your money.
Stealing the gun and the money. Yeah. And this is why the reintroduction of the next scene into the movie is such a huge mistake. One of the reasons, because this is our first cut scene that is pasted back into the movie inelegantly. Because the next scene, he's walking around with a dead chicken.
Oh yeah.
Which is the kind of the flip side of method actor prop work. Yeah, it was amazing. It was like my brain just like my brain just rejected it like it was my body rejecting a pig heart. This scene, because all the scenes of the original cut are just burned into my brain. So when I saw him walking around with that dead chicken, I was just like, "Oh no, something's wrong.
Yeah.
This is not right."
It's funny because I didn't even write down the chicken scene in my notes. Yeah. I just skipped right to the next part where he, like, Tuco finds the henchman and then the hotel owner gives up Clint.
All of that was cut. I mean, all of the, again, it's to explain parts of the plot that don't need explaining. Why he turns up with a bunch of men next time we see him.
Yeah.
Who the fuck cares? Get to the next
I was gonna say I hope you didn't mean, because I couldn't remember. I hope you didn't mean when they're outside his door while he's
but that's
cleaning his gun.
Right?
Yeah, like that's
it's a classic set piece, another classic set piece. And in the original cut, you went from gun store to that, and now you've got minutes with Eli Wallach wandering around with a chicken, like some fucking court jester. So imagine. Basically, what I'm saying is, imagine going from the gun store to this.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, it's, and again, backdrop of the Civil War, right? The history of the West only or the South, the West adjacent, only matters because it's going to be part. It's going to impact this scene and the set piece and how it plays out. If it didn't, we wouldn't know. The cannons going off wouldn't be part of it.
Sure. But what I found interesting, because I thought about this scene, or the front part of this scene, the very first part, that I thought about in the last movie where I was talking about sort of the new technology of guns, and that Leone seemed very interested in that. And I wondered, as we saw Clint cleaning his gun, the note I kind of thought to myself was, is this the first time we're seeing somebody clean their gun in the West? Like, how early did, what other Westerns have shown that?
Yeah.
Because to me, that's super interesting. I mean, it's not new technology, but the idea that you can just keep shooting your gun forever and have no problems is untrue. You have to keep them clean.
Yeah.
And I love that he's showing that. Plus, it fits in narratively once they show up, and You don't think for a second that he's got enough time to finish putting his gun back together and get bullets in the gun in time.
Yeah.
And the way it unfolds is masterful. So good.
Yeah. Yeah, and Leone loves to play with time, and this is a great, this is the suspense version of that.
Yeah.
But it's a play on cinematic time and the way that works through cross-cutting.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it's kind of broken up there. Yeah, I called it reassembling fun. But I think, and there's two things going on. I think it works on a metaphorical level of taking the Western apart and putting it back together again. But it is also, I think, Westerns at this time were concerned with seeing the frontier period as kind of the beginning of modern warfare.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of attention played both to kind of the technical elements of guns, cannons.
Yeah.
Not as much as, say, in the Wild Bunch, where, the arrival of the machine gun is sort of the end of the West. But there's definitely the idea of the onslaught of modern weapon technology.
We do get at the bridge scene, we do get a Gatling gun, though, right? We get the machine gun,
we do.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and the dynamite as well.
Yeah. Of
course. It's a really good example of how you can use your sort of historical backdrop to service the story and the action as well. But of course, and it's this movie's so good at just pulling the wool over the audience's eyes again and again, because and this is why I don't like that earlier scene, because Tuco's setting up the guys to be killed, and you didn't know that in the original cut. Well, you could guess, but it kind of ruins the surprise of him appearing in the window.
Yeah, I love it. When he shows up in the window, you think, okay, so he's a guy with a plan all along.
Yeah. And again, you know, he's delivering biblical justice. It's like even when Judas was hanged, there was a storm.
Hang himself, yeah.
Sounds like a line from Sympathy from the Devil. Even when Judas was hanged, there was a storm.
I know that song.
Well, because you've seen movies.
Yeah.
It's one of the most overused songs in movies and movie trailers. That was one good thing about Dial of Destiny. They picked the right era specific song to put in the movie rather than the trailer with Magical Mystery Tour.
All right, take it easy.
Yeah, and then there's kind of we take a moment to look at the sort of devastation of that the Civil War's kind of caused to the American landscape.
Yeah.
It's kind of the beginnings, and we're going to hear this again and again in the movie, this kind of elegiac brass. Right. But this comes way too early in the movie for it, because it's another one of those cutscenes that we've got here with Lee Van Cleef turning up.
Oh, with the Confederates?
Yeah. We're going to have literally hours of this coming to us. We don't need this scene as well.
Agreed.
It's too pointed too quickly. Like you have to warm up to the idea of, like, I think the genius of this movie is that what creeps up on you as the movie goes on is the human travesty of any war, but the American Civil War, where they're essentially, you know, brother fighting brother.
Yeah.
Ape shall not kill ape, as it were.
Oh, wait, did you listen to the most recent episode of How Did This Get Made?
No, I didn't.
Oh, there's a good Roddy McDowell apes kind of anecdote, so go ahead and listen to that.
I'm very excited.
Very funny.
But the reason that's affecting is it creeps up on you as the movie goes on.
Yeah.
And you sort of realize it when the characters do. But if you have this scene in there, again, why it was probably cut, it's all very pointed from very early on.
Right.
The amount of death and destruction and tragedy. And it disrupts the flow of the because this, you know, once the building collapses, I remember it's burned into my retinas. I can see we go hard cut to the pursuit across the desert.
Because I like
fucking Tuco going to the fires and picking up the cigars.
Why
would
stogies,
you put anything
exactly.
in between that? Why would you put anything in between those scenes?
Because I kept writing notes like, you know, it's funny when you first meet Tuco. What I love about that character is it's easy to write him off as not just brash, but also a bit dumb, cunning.
Yeah.
But dumb. But when you're following the Stogies along, you realize he has the same intellect that the other two guys have, just in a different way. And it's so cool to watch him go from fire pit to fire pit and pick up the Stogies and kind of smile and light one. And, like, you know, he's on the trail. And he's like a fucking bloodhound. He's not going to give up.
And it's a twist on the old Western movie cliche of, you know, the warm campfire.
Yeah.
Instead of the warm campfire, it's just like, is the cigar still smoking?
Right.
Although every time I think about that, I think of not Boomhauer, Dale in King of the Hill, when he's on the trail of the bloodhound when they think it's gone rabid, and he goes to the water bowl, he puts his finger in, and goes, still wet. Keeps going. I think possibly the saddest moment in this film, maybe in the entirety of the series, is what happens to poor Shorty.
Yeah, I was just looking at that in my notes.
It's like pure existential. It's this really existentialist moment. It's like something from an Albert Camus novel or Jean Paul Sartre story.
It feels so wrong because you, as the viewer, have like an inside look at at the con itself because of Tuco earlier in the movie. And because Tuco knows what it's like to have that noose around your neck, it seems all the more dickish for him to not allow Clint to shoot that rope.
He is resolute. He's like,
yeah. and Clint just has to say, "Sorry, Shorty."
It's like, you know, it's basically it's the existentialism of human life in the West captured in one vignette. You know, your life is hanging by a thread at all times, even if you think you're safe. But you know, it's kind of cool as well. We don't know what Shorty did. I mean, presumably, if for this con to work, he must have done some bad shit. But you know, he might just have, you know, rustled some horses or something rather than killing someone. So it's, you know, there's an extra, that ambiguity adds another tragedy to it. Like if we knew that Shorty was as bad or as worse as Tuco, we may care less, but we don't know that.
Yeah, but I think also there's an added level because, you know, it's Clint that gives up Tuco earlier in the film. He says, "March back to that town." And you wonder, well, if the con is still good, what is it? Is he uneasy about his relationship with Tuco? Can't quite trust him enough? But he's willing to go back to that con with somebody else.
Yeah, true.
So, you know, that part's never really explained in a way that is not unsatisfying. I just like the idea that he kicks Tuco to the curb, but he's willing to keep the con with somebody else.
Well, it's obviously a good moment because we've been able to generate quite a lot of conversation out of a very small aspect of the film. But yeah, this is the full-on 40 days in the desert.
March of Death.
Yeah, wandering in the desert. And again, the pink umbrella, such a great absurdist touch. That's what these films weren't afraid of being ridiculous or camp. Which is what kind of reminds me of Batman 66 as well. It's like they embrace that dimension rather than shy away from it, kind of get insecure about it. Those extra touches really kind of mean a lot.
Sure.
And another great example of experiential point of view, because the camera takes on the physical state of a Blondie as he staggers through the desert. I gotta say, I'm hugely impressed by, I guess, the end of the 60s is when we started to really up the game for prosthetics, but what they did to Clint's face is magnificent.
To his face is fantastic.
The photorealism.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, and you know, here's a Sergio Leone film. There's nowhere a face has nowhere to hide, right? If this wasn't good, you would see that it definitely wasn't good.
But it's funny. I thought the same thing for Tuco's mouth when he did his march. And then I read something on IMDb notes that was fucking terrible.
Oh, no.
I can't remember exactly what it was. It was, I want to say, there was like some sort of stage bottle or something was mislabeled that made Eli Wallach walk over and chug something that turned out to be an acid.
Well...
And then I thought, well, maybe all that shit on his mouth was real. So I don't know if that was Hollywood makeup or not, but
well, this has to be because it disappears very soon after. I think Tuco's has to be as well because Eli Wallach would have had scarring if that was the case.
Yeah, I think most of it was on the inside of his mouth, though.
Also,
they said,
what's a bottle of acid doing on the
I don't know. But listen, safety does not seem to be one of the primary concerns of one Sergio Leone.
Yeah. It really is the wild west of filmmaking.
I don't know how far we are away from that train cutting the handcuff of Tuco is.
Quite far, yeah.
Yeah. But Leone won.
He didn't make him do that, did he?
He did. He made him do it. And Wallach very much didn't want to do it. He got coaxed into it. And then apparently Leone didn't really have an idea of the I guess it's the step or something towards the bottom of the train, like a step that, you know, the first step you walk on. and it's a little bit lower, and how close it was to his head. I mean, he almost died within a couple of inches of that train just rolling him over.
It could have been the Twilight Zone movie of its time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so. When I always assume that when he runs away after that it's sped up. Well, it's like undercranked, but that might just the actual speed he was running.
That was the speed at which he was trying to run away and quit the movie.
Yeah.
They just caught it on film.
He just disappears over the horizon. Come back, Eli, we're cut. And again, you know, as in the last movie, whenever there is kind of whenever there are acts of violence, it's the torture and sadism aspects that stand out. The point of this scene is like laughing at and enjoying the pain of others.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting because that was absent from Clint's original take on this Gambit.
Right.
Right. It was cold, but it was emotion. You know, it had no vindictiveness behind it.
But not a lot of venom behind it. Right.
Yeah.
And you got the sense that he was giving him as close to a fair shake of living as possible.
A 50-50 chance. This is 90-10.
Yeah, exactly.
And really, the 10% is a wagon with a man who's got some secret about some gold.
Some secret about a gold, right? And I'll tell. It's funny too because, of course, the runaway stagecoach appears and Carson's on it.
Yeah.
And what I found interesting is because Carson's going to die on the spot. And I thought of that as an inversion of the last film we watched because El Indio is very much the MacGuffin of that movie. And the bounty killers are both after him. He's the one they're going after. And that this starts like that for one of the characters.
Yeah.
But then the movie's going to subvert that whole thing when you finally meet him, he's dead within seconds.
Yeah.
And I like that inversion.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that's again purposeful, and again, it's better if we don't know that this is coming, because in the cutscene, that's where Lee Van Cleef finds out that he's on the loose, that they've escaped.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's better when you don't know that, because again, it falls that surprise of the mirage in the desert moment. And it's great he has an eye patch and a gold map. So he really is a pirate. This really is pirate's treasure here. One byproduct of, we haven't talked, again, I think because we're both in agreement that we don't care, the dubbing.
Yeah.
One of the byproducts of it is that it's like it fits that idea of the first person camera, because it sounds like it's coming from inside people,
right,
as opposed to it like being heard externally. It sounds like it's coming from coming internally out of people. So I think it's a byproduct, but it certainly fits with how POV is represented in these movies.
Right. I want you to think back all the way to the first time you saw this movie, because a thought had reoccurred to me while we were watching it, or while I was watching it, rather, for our purposes. Because I forget what makes Tuco leave the stagecoach at some point. But when he gets back, Clint is there, and Carson's dead.
He's getting water for Carson, so he doesn't.
Oh, that's
die.
what it is. He's getting water.
Carson blackmails him essentially.
Mm-hmm.
With his last breath, he blackmails him into giving him water. He starts to tell him about the gold, and then stops and says water.
Yeah. But what I liked was I had this reoccurring thought that the first time I saw this movie, my first thought was, this was all a bluff from Clint. He never got the name. Did you ever think that way back then?
Oh, that's good. I mean, it's perfectly possible, because he is bluffing. He does bluff about the grave.
Yeah, but that's later.
Well, yeah, but true. But I mean, it's in character.
That's later, and he does clearly. Yeah. By the end, he does clearly know.
I think the only problem with that is it kind of halts the movie a little bit. Because what are they going to do? Arrive at just a random graveyard, and there's no. I mean, That's worse than Shorty getting hanged. That's even
Yeah.
more depressing than that. You got to have some payoff here in the movie. Oh, and so the writing past the mission,
Mm-hmm.
like the writing when he finds the soldiers and asks about the mission and his brother. Another cutscene, another transitional scene doesn't need to be there. Next scene, they're gonna arrive at the mission. He's gonna
When
say,
they stop
Padre
at
Ramirez there.
the other soldiers. All right.
So it's just doubling up on information that we don't need.
Right.
And again, I'd rather see him, with the do the business with the eye patch without knowing that he's been in the eye patch for that long.
Yeah. Sure.
It's all bad. All the cutscenes that are introduced are terrible. It's interesting as well that this is where I realize the man with no name is not the man with no name. He's the man without a backstory, because they ask who are his people, and he's like, nothing. There's no one.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because whether you believe these are the same characters or not, we know Mortimer has a family. Tuco has a family.
Yeah. Right.
But every time we see Clint, he's completely... Every time we see Clint's Western characters, Clint's characters in one of his Western movies, he's all alone. Completely, he's isolated. He doesn't have any community around him anywhere.
Right.
And he never finds his community in the way that the other characters do.
Not yet.
No, I knew you were gonna say not yet. You're gonna make it so that they were brothers.
No.
He killed Angel Eyes, and he was actually his brother. Yeah. Oh, and another kind of anti-actor studio note. His actor studio training makes him great at insincerity. Which I
Wait,
think
what was that?
His actor studio training makes him great at insincerity, which I think it was supposed to do the opposite. But when he's pretending to be genuinely concerned about Clint to the priests,
Yeah.
and then
Right.
he lifts up the iPad,
That patch.
and it's like, this guy's so good at lying.
Yeah, it was good to see that guy from the last movie as the priest, the El
As his
Indio's
brother, yeah.
partner. Yeah.
It's a phenomenal scene.
But I was just gonna say, it's a fantastic scene.
So out of left field.
Out of left field. What an amazing way to ground the character of Tuco.
Yeah, you begin the scene with Tuco as this larger than life a larger than life character played outside in, and you leave with a grounded character played inside out.
Mm-hmm.
In the space of a scene, and it's really well written because you end up seeing the situation from his eyes by the end in a very short period of time.
Short period of time, and it also hooked into me things like The Wire, and because he has that line where he says, "There's only two things. When you're as poor as we are, there's only two things you can do. You can become a priest, or you can become a criminal." And that's it.
And he's the one
And that's sort of the refrain you always get on, an urban kind of cop show about super poor people. They have two choices, essentially. Or most of the time it feels like one choice. It's join a gang or you're nobody.
Yeah. And, he's like George Bailey, had to stay behind.
Yeah.
And look after his family.
Mm-hmm.
So, you get that. You come out going, he's kind of like George Bailey, which is not the way you thought about him when he went into the scene. But as good as the scene is, I actually think the scene afterwards with him and Clint is even better. When he's pretending that it all went well and that his brother was happy to see him and that they have a good relationship, and Clint knows he's bullshitting but plays along anyway. It makes me cry just to think about it now. I don't know how they pull out such an affecting moment in a movie like this, but they do. And
there's a moment where he kind of gestures back to the mission, and I can't remember what he's talking about. I think he's feigning how close they are, or he says, "We don't get to see each other often, but hope maybe we'll see each other again. And he kind of gestures back and then looks away from Clint and kind of scratches his head.
Yeah.
And that really struck me, you know?
And, you know, again, that's why Clint is the good.
Yeah.
Because he could choose to rub it in
his face. Yeah.
But he chooses, he reverts to humanity in this moment, even after all Tuco's done to him.
At the end, after that, I like the boys in gray.
Oh
joke.
My God! And perfect visual humor, right?
It also leans to character comedy too, because the brashness of Tuco.
Yeah. He's straight in there, isn't he?
Yeah.
Death to General Lee.
Who is it again? I love that when who is it?
But
Clint just says.
But it's
Lee.
also it underlines the futility of the Civil War, right? Basically it's
we're all the same.
It's one army divided along color lines, and when they're at a distance, you can't tell the difference between them.
Right.
Also, they picked the best straight man to leading the cavalry.
Oh yeah.
I don't know where they found that guy, but that's
just the brush off.
This weird emaciated bearded man.
Bearded man. Yeah.
I just love it. Yeah. But I mean, the beginning of that scene, think about the levels that are going on here. You've got a character who's lying to himself and others.
Yeah.
And another character lying to protect his feelings.
Right.
That is an extremely complex web of interpersonal connection going on there. It's a perfect button to the scene. I love it. It's again another perfectly landed joke. And we're in a prison. Now we're suddenly in Stalag 17 out of nowhere. That episode is over and it's a new episode.
We're starting. Yeah, exactly.
And this one is a war movie. This week's The Twilight Zone is
last week on GBU.
This week's Alfred Hitchcock Presents is taking place in a prisoner of war camp. Yeah, and I suppose, and again, like the last movie was like a hybridized with a heist movie.
Mm-hmm.
And the kind of hybrid genres of this movie are war and prison movies.
Sure.
And again, Prisoner of War Camp is the collision of the two.
Yeah, and I remember really being struck on this viewing. It reminded me of something else, but I couldn't lay a finger exactly on what it was I was thinking of, because when Van Cleef shows up, but now he's wearing his uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, it reminded me of something else where you thought somebody was something, and it turns out he's something else entirely, and that he's kind of working within the confines of not the law, but whatever's adjacent to the law within a civil war, because he's a soldier.
So I'm trying to track the chronology of this. So is this the first time Tuco recognizes Angel Eyes?
I think so.
Yeah, because it's only Clint who recognizes him back in the town.
Yeah.
And this is obviously the first time that Angel Eyes recognizes the two of them.
Right.
But again, still keeping open the possibility that they're the same characters or the same characters with new identities. Especially now Angel Eyes is kind of doing the job that we're told he did for real in the last movie.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Because he's gone, I think we said it in the last episode, he was, colonel turned bounty hunter. Now he's bounty hunter turned colonel.
Right.
But he's a fake, but he's definitely not, he's enlisted for the wrong reasons, clearly.
But I remember, I was surprised. I just like the idea of, he brings Tuco into the room, and then all of a sudden you're watching two people that you didn't think know each other, and it turns out they fucking know each other. And
yeah.
The moment with the spoon where he's very excited to eat that food at first, but then the ever cautious Tuco.
Another eating scene.
Yeah.
Another eating scene. Yeah, as well. it's like a visual language of secret meaning through food.
Yeah, well, I was eating it up myself. Every last moment.
Well, especially, you know, and it's good it's good storytelling as well, because he wants Angel Eyes to
something
eat it
out of
before
him.
he does.
Yeah.
He wants to get something out of him.
Oh, I was thinking the other way. I was thinking about giving the
both.
food
Yeah, and Tuco wants to make sure it's not poison, so
Right.
Angel Eyes eats a spoonful. Well, or, you know, with his level spoon, he probably doesn't get much in his mouth.
I also love that, like, how easily he gives up Clint, and then later professes to him, I wouldn't tell them anything about you.
And again, like, torture played to sentimental music. So it's your basic Leone torture scene, but with the audio-visual irony of it's being played to a kind of a Dixieland anthem,
Sure.
which is kind of like, you know, these war anthems that satirize the glorification of violence, and seeing the two juxtaposed together, it really drives that home.
And then they get separated.
And there's again, like, emotion that you don't expect to be there. The musician who gets brought to tears because he knows what the music means. He means that someone's getting beaten within an inch of their life, and it's just like, this is where we start to sort of think in human terms about the war.
Yeah.
It's kind of, this scene is almost the turning point where we're like, in the original version, where we start to realize, oh yeah, people are really dying on a mass scale here.
Sure. Well, because from here on out, it's going to be kind of all war all the time. The war will be present in the rest of our story.
It will be, yeah. And yeah, absolutely. So Tuco and Blondie are separated, but Clinton Lee, or
Together.
Angel Eyes and Blondie pair up, as promised at the end of the last movie, but they're two different people, probably.
Yeah, two different people, and I love the moment where Clint kills one of his henchmen, and it just doesn't make Angel Eyes even blink.
Yeah.
Just like one less person I got to share gold with.
Which,
not that I was going to
exactly.
share any of it anyway, but...
Which underlines how redundant that scene is when we find out that he's brought a bunch of guys with him.
Yeah.
We don't need these scenes. Never bumped me that suddenly he was surrounded by people. There's also a nice little side moment in the scene where we see soldiers having photographs taken, and Leone's kind of like distracted for a second by the idea of like photography in that era, and how, you know, obviously that led to film. I think you even hear the photographer saying it's still magic.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like, it's kind of like the roots of the moving image right there.
Well, Tuco's gonna jump off the train and get his handcuffs, and himself,
And
the
so
actor, almost murdered. Before
I was gonna say, and Eli Wallach is gonna do the same.
Yeah. Right before we both end up in a kind of blown up town, why don't we take another break? And
this is where I wanted to put a break too, because somehow we're getting through this movie.
Somehow, some way.
It's not the length of movie that makes us talk for a long time. That's what I realize. It's the kind of movie we're doing.
True. We're right on schedule.
Yeah, I know, but this is a 3 hour. This is a.
We're coming in way under
movie.
3 hours on this movie. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be right back, everybody. Choke on that, Aldrich.
Back in the day, you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook. They're on Instagram. They'll try new beers. They'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back once again. Listen to that fucking music. Maybe I'll take different sections of it and not the same repeated one. Try to get as much of it in.
Either that or you'll have to cut what you just said from the,
yeah.
the episode.
Yeah.
It's one. It's going to go one
or
two
the
ways. Other. Either you're not hearing this,
or
Mike did it, or you're hearing this and
I'm not cutting this and you're just listening to the same music, and I'll just announce now, I got lazy. I
gotta say, I was impressed on a recent Patreon episode.
I did do that, didn't I?
You said, if I get my shit together, I'll play the bit of the music from Batman vs Superman that sounds like Succession, and it came thundering in.
Yeah, I went that in the middle and bookended with different music. Because at first I made that first music, and then I came to the part of the spot where I said that, and I was like, fuck. I guess I won't be a lazy fuck. I'll go get that music.
That speaks well of you. We all appreciate what you do. We all appreciate how
by all you mean you.
No, as chatting to a listener in Australia this day. She's pretty far on Instagram. She's pretty far back into she's still on Young Guns 2, so it's going to take a while before she hears this. But KL,
that's awesome.
Thank you for listening to our Young Guns 2 episode, and I sent her a note saying please be. She put up on our on her story that she was listening to it.
Oh, that's awesome! I love that.
And I said,
you haven't even got to the episodes where we feel like we know what we're doing yet.
I said that. I said, please be kind to us. This was from our classic Krusty era.
Yeah.
Classic spelt KL, of course.
Well, how else would you? I mean, come on.
Yeah. And she said she really enjoyed it, and she thought we made a lot of salient points.
Excellent.
So.
All right, back on track, Tangent Boy. Now. So they both end up in this sort of
compliment I've ever received.
In this fucked up town that the war is just treating like shit, right?
Mm.
And I have this note here that says, but I didn't write down who it was. But my note was that somebody recognized the sound of somebody else's gunshot.
Clint.
Was that your... Clint notices his gunshot?
Tuco's,
Tuco's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He said the exact quote is every gun makes its own tune.
There you go.
So, which again is the importance of audio in this movie.
Right.
It's another form of storytelling. It links to other stories. It's an audio clue that leads him to realizing Tuco has escaped, or I should say Eli Wallach has escaped near death.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it's worth it. No endangerment of human life is worth that, but it's a fucking cool scene.
It is a fucking cool scene, but I gotta tell you, the dead body that gets dragged under the train.
He was really dead?
There was this part of me that thought, I think they used an actual body.
Oh, like a corpse?
Yeah.
That's a big corpse. Would you be able to find a big corpse that quick?
It was the big fat guard from the prison, right? That he jumps off the train with?
In both movies.
Yeah.
He's a prison guard in this movie and the previous movie.
There you go.
Well, yeah, we have this I mean, it was in the original quotable for this episode, when you have to shoot, don't talk.
Yeah.
But the whole scene is so well done because this guy just randomly, sees him as he's going into a derelict building, and you have the amazing shot of Eli Wallach just pouring all these colored bath salts into the bathtub.
I put Soapy Kill.
And that's the other thing that I like about his performance is that kind of excess and camp to it as well. Like he's immediately just pours all the bath salts he can find into there. There's a slightly dandy aspect to him, like a slightly kind of effete, self sort of preening, self kind of preening aspect to him. Him and Clint as well. I think Clint is again more stylish in this movie than he's been in any movie. But
I don't know. I mean, the classic brown hat and poncho's fucking pretty good.
It is, but it's not, you can't go out on the town in 1973 with it and look as good as you would in the outfit in this movie.
True. I do like Bill Murray in fucking Groundhog Day showing up in that poncho.
Oh, that's right. Yes, yeah.
I told you. Call me Bronco.
The possibly underage girl.
Yeah, when he goes to the ticket booth, it says one adult and one...
two adults.
Two adults, please.
Cancelable.
Yep.
Well, he's already been cancelled. By the way, when Gene Hackman died and he came, we got ahead of ourselves, didn't we? We let zero tangents get through the movie in record time, and suddenly we can't stop ourselves. Tangent heavy.
Careening towards a full 3 hours.
Tangent heavy final third. And he came out and talked about Gene Hackman's behavior on the set of the Royal Tenenbaums. I'm like, you are the last person who gets to talk about other people's on-set behavior, sir.
I think I do remember that. He just said he was giving Wes a really hard time, right?
Right. And
but I liked Edward Norton, I think, has stories about that. Because he ended up subsequently, working so much with Wes Anderson. Yeah. Anderson himself would tell stories. The big fight he had was about calling John Glover Satchmo. Because I think he calls him Black Buck.
Yeah.
But he wanted to call him Satchmo. Or Coltrane. He calls him Coltrane first and then a Black Buck later. And so, yeah, it was the Coltrane one. And he wanted to call him Satchmo. And Wes Anderson said, "Can you tell me why?" And he kind of gave his answer, and he goes, "Okay, I can understand that, but I like the cadence and everything of the other one better." And apparently Hackman just said, "Well, I mean, it's just your fucking audience, but fuck them, right?" And Norton was like, he was old school, man. He didn't give a fuck.
Oh, and I'm sure everything Bill Murray's saying is true. And
true, yeah, but you're just not the guy.
He was saying it politely too, but yeah. I'm sorry, you need to look at the man in the mirror.
But going back to our movie and getting off tangent, or back to where we should.
Gene Hackman was in Unforgiven. It's related.
Yeah. Not that I watched this movie a lot, but when I think of this scene, I think of something I'd never seen in a Western before. This idea of the bombed out town that's barely a town anymore because of the war, and as they walk through the smoke-filled streets.
It's so much more effective, as far as I'm concerned, than actually making a movie about war and the issues and the emotional issues around it.
Yeah, right.
And I think as the movie, the finale of the movie in the graveyard, even more so.
Yeah, absolutely.
The fact that we're not putting too fine a point on the the mass death is what makes it so resonant and affecting to me. So, just the idea of that it's not the focus of the scene, but it's impossible to ignore.
Yeah, sure.
the background of cannon fire you hear in so many scenes.
Mm-hmm.
But what really matters is this kind of swapping of partnerships and alliances. So Clint immediately goes back to an alliance, a marriage of convenience with Tuco, but you get the sense that that's his preferred pairing if he had a choice. So, and then my next note is that we go all the way into the trenches. So this is ultimate war film. Once you're in a trench, you're in a war film, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no two ways about it. They go right into the trenches, and you've got your drunken, cynical captain.
That's my note. Yeah, the drunken officer.
Yeah,
and it's fun. I think it's really interesting. That character is fascinating to me because a drunkard seems like a person who doesn't care, but he also seems to have the sort of highest moral fiber in the sense of his sense of duty and what he's going to do and willing to do.
That's old Hollywood coding.
Yeah.
That Leone's picking up on, because back when the Hays Code, was in force in Hollywood, there was a lot that they couldn't say, not even with about sex and violence and but just politically that they couldn't say. And they would put any kind of content that was deemed too controversial in the mouths of drunk people. So you got plausible deniability. You could say, oh well, he's drunk. There's a great one in the Judy Garland movie, The Clock, played by, I want to say, Keenan Wynn, or maybe it's Chill Wills. But this drunk who comes in the bar, and this is like, the movie's like it's like mid 1940s, and he's raving about McCarthyism. So he's meant to be like a McCarthyite, because he's going around going, it's un-American, like everything anyone's doing, you're un-American, everyone's un-American in the room. And then just like because he's the drunk, it doesn't matter, but you slip in this kind of satirical, countercultural attack on McCarthy and what he's doing to America. Amazing.
Not to load up another tangent, but I can't even remember the name of the movie, but one thing I always remember is, what was the movie? I think it might have just been an HBO film where James Woods is playing Leonard Cohen.
41? No, okay. I thought you were talking about the making of Citizen Kane movie.
No, not that.
James Woods played Leonard Cohen?
I think so. Because there's a scene...
First of all, how do you know who Leonard Cohen is? Second of all...
Wait!
Canadian poet, singer.
No, I'm thinking of the lawyer, the shitty lawyer.
Oh my god. Roy Cohn.
Roy Cohn. Thank you.
You're not thinking of Angels in America, are
No.
you?
I don't think it was that, though.
Did you just think Leonard Cohen was Roy Cohn?
That's terrible.
I can't tell you how many graves that is spitting on.
Multiple.
Multiple graves have been spat on.
Why would I supplant a musician for anybody else ever?
That's what I don't understand, is that how you even have the name Leonard Cohen to hand to mistake someone for.
Roy Cohn.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I remember was, is it a senator from Wisconsin that dresses down McCarthy when he says, have you no sense?
I know McCarthy was from Wisconsin. I don't know. I can't
remember who the other senator was that has the famous line. But the second he says that, I remember a shot of Woods as Roy Cohn just getting up and start walking out of the fucking hearing room. Like, that guy's done, and I am therefore done with him.
Mm-hmm.
Great shot.
Yeah.
All right, tangent done.
For now.
Fucked that all up.
But yeah, I think that. But to go back to the original point you're making, I think that is the point. Is that he's drunk, so he can say all this countercultural.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is Vietnam backlash as much as it is general war.
Yeah, right.
War protest. Yeah, it's like paths of glory in those trenches. There's this because there's a general jadedness about war, which is kind of like it's gone beyond politics at this point because we've been in both camps, and the mood, the mood of both of them is just pure despair. There's no sense of what either of them are fighting
Well,
for.
plus they have that one moment where it's quiet for a long time, and my note was, oh, suddenly the war is broken out.
Yeah.
And you go from that despair to now we all have to put our guns onto our shoulders and march down and start shooting at each other and put our lives back into jeopardy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure how much trenches actually factored in the Civil War, and I haven't looked it up. But
oh, that's another chore for you.
This is another. I mean, this film's made in Europe, and they're commenting on, we've had, within recent memory, 2 world wars that have destroyed Europe. Twice over. So that's got to be some of the melancholy here. Yeah, and this. I mean, there's nothing to say about this battle, but wow.
Mm-hmm.
And double wow because it's perversely only a backdrop to the scene. Like they
right.
managed to keep a coherent sense of the foreground as well. Which again, I think when I see epic cinema, I'm like, there's no distinction between the two. It's just kind of all happening on screen at once. But you have a sense that this really is to just build out the world in as realistic a way as possible. But the events of the story are all going on in the foreground because, they blow up the bridge for the captain. That's their kind of gesture to the humanitarianism of war. But they're not. They're doing it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah,
because
right.
they know they have to kind of blow up that bridge. And as the thing, it's like once the film shows its humanity, you can never get attached to it because it's going to undercut it almost immediately. This is the moment you've already mentioned with the taking an injured soldier off a stretcher and putting dynamite on it,
right?
Which just undercuts everything that we've just been talking about, and it's such a bold tonal move on behalf of the movie. And I think it's one of the reasons why this is such a good movie is that it never forgets where its priorities are. These are bad dudes who do bad shit.
Bad things. Right. Yeah.
Let's not forget, right? They might be prone to minor acts of humanitarianism here and there, but none of it gets in the way of them, finding their fortunes.
Of course. Do you know the story of the blowing up the bridge?
Bridge on the River Kwai?
No, this bridge. They had to blow it up twice.
Oh my god. That's where the originally the budget was about half that.
Yeah, right.
About 500,000.
So there was an actual Spanish army captain kind of in charge of the whole thing. And there was a code, which was VAL, which means go. And so over the walkie-talkies, this guy, like, he was in charge of the trigger. So if he heard that means go ahead and blow it up.
Oh
some other crew member talking about something else picked up a walkie-talkie and said, vai, which kind of means the same thing. It goes, bro, go ahead, proceed. And so blew up the bridge. No cameras rolling. So Leone goes fucking apeshit, fires the guy that like sent the wrong message. Yeah. The Spanish captain had to go up to him and say, okay, listen, we're going to make you a deal. The army will rebuild this bridge. You can blow it up again on the one condition that you hire that guy back and forgive him. So they went and got the guy, brought him back, rebuilt the bridge, and then blew it up on film this time. But my other story was I read that you can see it too, because it's Wallach and Eastwood in that little bunker.
Out of the frying pan into the fire for Eli Wallach.
Fuck, man. When there's a piece of that bridge that comes within a foot or two of Clint's head. And they just didn't expect it was like, it reminded me of that Friday the 13th part.
Yes. Oh,
7?
Yes, the house that blew up too quickly.
Yeah.
Which would have been a good title for the movie.
Yeah.
The
But it
house
reminded me of
blew
that.
up too quickly.
And so everybody was very relieved that that piece of debris didn't brain Clint Eastwood, because he almost died that day too.
Wow. How bitter would Clint Eastwood be if he had a piece of wood in his brain? He's probably doing what RFK's doing now with his worm brain.
Yeah, exactly. That's you can't squint those eyes any further.
And as well, you know, despite all of that endangering of human life that Leone is famous for, it's a fidelity to the real, I think, creating a practical explosion to service a minor plot point in the act of the film. It's, you know, the example I always go back to is Orson Welles filming a snowstorm in a reflection in a window.
Yeah.
Because that's what it would look like if you were walking past the window.
Right.
But you have to film a scene that is barely going to be shown on screen in order to do it. And I think that's what's going on here. I think he is sort of like the fictional world comes first.
Yeah, well, because it's everything for the characters. They need these two armies to fuck off so that they can get across.
That's true. It's also, I mean, this is obviously, it's got more real real American history, Western adjacent history in it.
Uh-huh.
But it does have a mythic quality. There is the biblical stuff, but the journey through the film's almost like a kind of Odyssey quality to it. Like it's kind of almost mythological in the Greek sense as well as the modern Western sense. Yeah, and this is, you know, again, the good when Clint gives his coat and cigar to a dying man, and that's what being good means in this fictional universe. It's
besides, he's about to get a new hat. Well, he's already got his new hat. He got the new hat when Van Cleef gave him new clothes to wear. So he's got the hat, but he'll find a poncho soon enough.
And, you know, this is where, even after this scene, which you think is going to be the most affecting scene in the movie, I think when you get to the cemetery.
Oh, fuck.
And that, you know, it's the number of graves and having Eli Wallach run around it.
I love that circular motion where he concentrically kind of keeps moving out and out and out, trying to move quickly enough to find the right grave. It's so good.
And the build of that
music.
The build of that music and the way it interacts with the kind of the dizzying experiential visuals when they quick cut between all the shots of Wallach running, and it almost looks like a kaleidoscope for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the music kind of driving, it's eclectic, it's ethereal, but it's grounded, and it's very moving because the reality of it is all these people died in war.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even if the characters don't care, you still care as the viewer. The movie cares.
Yeah,
I care.
But I think that's an important point you bring up, because I think the movie cares.
The movie absolutely cares, and one of the characters sort of cares, but the other two couldn't give a shit.
Right.
Happy to the war to go on forever if it you know helps them towards their ends.
If it's cover for them.
Yeah. The return of the poncho is my next note. It's a very proto-Marvel reveal of legacy costuming here. It's like what's a Marvel superhero? Iron Man getting his suit or something.
Why does it have to be Marvel?
Because that's what it reminds me of. This kind of they're the ones who make the biggest deal about, you know, how the elephant got its trunk, how Iron Man gets his thing that makes it the suit that he can fly around in.
All right.
Not go to when he not be in when he's visiting Spider-Man. Yeah, so but again, it's like it's you've kind of reconciled yourself to the fact that he's a completely different character. Then he puts the poncho on, and
I know, yeah,
you're
exactly.
Like, it's like, oh, so maybe he
Oh,
is the
God
same
damn
guy.
it.
I thought I just figured it out, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Given what you said about this, potentially being a prequel as well,
Sure.
then that suggests this is the first time he's put the poncho on, maybe. And this is, Mexican standoff is a term that's overused these days, but this is the original Mexican standoff, isn't
I
it?
mean, this is just
one
filmmaking
of
at
them's
its fucking best. Yeah.
One of the characters is Mexican, none of the actors.
I was going to
but one of
say,
the characters.
characters maybe, not the actors, though.
I mean, this is if you ever want to show a scene from a movie that shows all the elements of film in perfect unison, I think it's this one.
Yeah, exactly.
There's not any cinematic technique left on the table.
Nope.
It's a winner take all scenario. But again, taking it to a kind of level of convergence where, again, going back to that guy's conference paper about synesthesia, you don't know if you hear the image or see the sound anymore. It completely converges, falls in on itself.
Sure.
It's just like, it's the effect of it all together creates a kind of gestalt that's bigger than the sum of its parts. And again, there's maybe not character or serial narrative links between the movies, but kind of linking elements of the two movies together, like the timepiece sound.
Yeah.
It's no longer associated with the timepiece, but we remember the sound as part of the soundtrack of the last movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, it's talking to the viewer. It's connecting the movies in the ears of the audience, but not in a way where it's not the timepiece means nothing to these guys, any of them.
Right.
As the way it did at the end of the last movie. So I don't have any. I mean, that's all I had to say about it. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about it because it's just a perfect moment of cinema.
A pure cinema as well,
right.
It doesn't do anything. In fact, it actively slows down the story it grinds the story to a halt
completely.
So it's pure spectacle cinema as well. On top of that, and yet it's telling its own kind of internal story as well with the eyes and the cutting on back and forth
back and forth. There's also close up on hands, so it made me go. I had to end up saying to myself, did Lee Van Cleef miss a part of his finger?
Oh,
his fucking middle finger.
Really?
And he's missing a part of his finger. It was, I don't know, he's working on like a bandsaw or something at home and cut off the tip of his middle finger.
They were tougher back in those days, weren't
Just
they?
badder, yeah. They were just fucking.
You see, because as soon as you said that, I was like, I can see Lee Van Cleef cutting off his own finger and then maybe not telling anyone about it for about 3 days.
Yeah.
And just kind of like, it's just sort of tied back on with string.
Yes. No, see, to me it was like, well, that one goes in the garbage and I'll wrap this one up. And
he's just...
a couple weeks I'll be fine.
And then next time you see him, he's got a metal finger. I was like, oh yeah, therein lies the tale. I think the other brilliance of this scene is that it ends on a moment of bathos that manages not to feel anticlimactic, even though it's the essence of an anticlimax.
Yeah,
because one of the characters his gun doesn't even have a
fucking bullet.
So in a sense, it's a two-way standoff, and it's all. Clint is kind of managing the con.
Yeah, he's managing the con, but he's also...
So the outcome is already rigged. It's like
I mean, if it's the
outcome is
first
rigged
time,
anyway.
yeah, if it's the first time you're watching the movie, though, one of the pleasures
Yeah.
of it, because it's three people, is, and because the way Leone shoots it and the way it's drawn out and the masterful way in which he builds and heightens tension, for me, I keep thinking, well, which character thinks... who does each character think is the fastest draw? So who's going to try to kill who?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that he subverts that expectation because Tuco doesn't even have a fucking bullet. That's great.
Well, one of the things that's amazing about this film is it has confidence in its own surprises.
Yeah, right.
And I think if you're going to do a plot twist, you do need to have that confidence behind it. So if you're going to do, like, you know, people talk about how Hitchcock could never end a film. He always wanted to end a film on a moment of travesty that kind of undermined the rest of the movie.
Mm.
But there's tremendous filmmaking confidence behind that as well.
Right.
I mean, it's to decide, you know, no, I actually want to end this movie in a jarring way, not a satisfying way.
Yeah.
I think that's a kind of cinematic mastery too. You know, the nun falling out of the tower in Vertigo. It's
yeah,
like,
right.
the fuck? That's how you end this movie? But, you know, there's a confidence behind that that's like, no. Last minute, fuck them up. Fuck them up in there. And I think that's what's going on here. Yeah, it's like, leave them thinking what's going to come next. What could possibly come next?
I'll tell you what comes next. A noose around Tuco's neck.
Which again, yeah, I mean, it's again raising the stakes once again.
Raising the stakes when you think the movie's over, plus bookending, coming full circle, back to where we started.
Yeah, if you drew the trajectory of this screenplay, it would just be all pointing to the middle. And we haven't even mentioned this, and again, I think the dialogue, you know, the screenplay at the level of dialogue doesn't get the credit that it deserves.
Yeah, sure.
Because they've had this sort of runner through the movie of there's two kinds of people in the world, and they kind of repeat it back to each other. And
Right.
this is the punchline to that runner, because he gets the final zinger.
Mm-hmm.
And he's on the end of a noose. But again, the movie's kind of played the same trick on us twice. Because for a few dollars more, hid the ball that it was a revenge drama until the last scene.
Yeah.
And they do the same again here, because you've kind of forgotten that Clint might be harboring any ill will towards Tuco.
Right.
But he's actually
just giving himself some
so
distance.
He can take revenge. Yeah, and I think, you know, and again, that's why he's the good, because, you know, he's restoring he's the divine retribution. He's restoring the moral harmony.
Yeah.
That's been upset in the course.
Well,
of
and
the
also,
movie.
I mean, he doesn't take all the money. He was probably always willing to split the money, but he cannot trust Tuco. This is the only way he can make this work.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's more about protecting himself.
Yeah.
Than it is a moral authority.
Plus, I don't know, there's just something really delicious about him shooting that rope, saving Tuco's life, essentially, and Tuco not giving one fuck and still falling to the ground and cursing his name and hating him. And
obscenity drowned out by coyotes.
Yeah.
That's how you end a movie. And then, of course, you know, another full circle in a movie full of them. The closure of the nickname titles again.
Yeah, right.
We see them all, and this time they go forward, right? They go in order this time, I think.
I think so.
But so it's interesting because it's like all the characters have undergone a transformation in the course of the film, but they're also right back to where they started.
Yeah.
That's kind of interesting. That started the movie.
Yeah, but maybe not Angel Eyes, seeing as he's dead. You could argue he was dead inside all along, but
yeah, I know exactly. But he's still even in his grave, he's still bad.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
he's just bad at shooting. That's what it should have been. The bad ... at shooting.
At shooting. Well, why don't you give us a credit check?
Well, I would.
The end.
Yeah, this one ends even more abruptly than the last one, yeah. Credit music without credits again.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
All right. Good shit, though.
Yeah, oh, you know, for all my, languorous, overly exhaustive credit checking, I don't actually want movies to have credits.
Yeah, right.
This is fine. This is fine
This
for
is
me.
great.
I like knowing that the movie just ticks down to the end of its running time, and then that's it.
Right.
The stream stops, and that's it. I don't care beyond that. And movies used to know that. God damn it!
We have a few seconds of extra time for a tangent.
Oh my god! You don't know when we're ahead, do you?
No. But I can't leave this series without discussing a little more Van Cleef. Did you ever know of a show? It's only one season.
You could have totally saved this for the next episode as well, but go on.
I know. But we finished this way earlier than I expected.
Way early? What does that mean for us? Nothing.
I allotted
That's
us
a ridiculously
eight
low
more
bar.
minutes at least.
That's a ridiculously low bar.
There's a 1980s show called The Master,
Oh.
where he is like a
Sound
martial
this.
arts master.
What?
Guess who he's in charge of?
Ugh.
You'll never guess.
Is he younger or older than Van Cleef? He's got to be younger, right?
He's way younger. It's one. So
Michael J. Fox.
no, you'll know him because of The Sopranos. But do you remember The White Shadow? You know The White Shadow.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Timothy Van Patten.
Oh. Well, he was in Wings, right? No, Wings as well.
No.
Just in the White Shadow. He was in another big show, very big show, but not the Ed Sullivan Show. Anyway,
I don't know, but he directed.
but
well,
I know he plays Christopher's writer sponsor.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh no, wait.
Does
Am I
he
thinking of
play
the
him?
same- Oh no, I'm thinking of Tim Daly. Who's Tim Van Patten play?
Oh,
in The
Tim-
Sopranos?
He directed like dozens and
Oh,
dozens of the episodes.
wait, and he was an actor too?
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea.
He
Yeah,
was
I
one of
remember
the
his name, Tim
students
Van
in The
Patten.
White Shadow. He was Salami. And then he was on this fucking show that
That's
I
how he got
loved
the gig for The Sopranos.
called The Master. Yeah.
I didn't know he was.
And
an
I just
actor.
looked it up. It's on Tubi. I'm gonna have to watch
Of
an
course it
episode.
is.
Gonna have to watch an episode or two of The Master.
With 1,000 commercials,
Yeah.
just like it was originally aired.
Intended.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Lee Van Cleef's career is interesting because he was, he also has this Escape from New York as well
Yeah, right. Of course.
as an older actor. I guess all of them kind of lasted up to a point. I mean, no one's going to go on as long as Clint, but Eli
Sure.
Wallach was Godfather Part 3.
I told you already about Tough Guys, Burt Lancaster, fucking
Oh,
Kirk
I know
Douglas.
Tough Guys. Yeah, I forgot Eli Wallach was in it, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's one of the most disappointing movies I've ever seen.
Oh, I love that movie. I don't know why. I just there's no reason to.
If your
Early
favorite
Dana
film is Ace in the
Carvey.
Hole,
Early Dana Carvey. You got Eli Wallach. You've got that great story that Alec Baldwin tells on Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee.
oh yeah. Well, that's true. The stories, I'm sure. But
Good shit.
But nothing beats modern day Kirk Douglas. Nothing beats Chester J. Lampwick from The Simpsons. That's his best. post Hollywood role, as far as I'm concerned.
Perfect.
Liver and onions.
Well, if ladies and gentlemen, if you want
Those
weigh...
corn muffins were terrible. How long we got left? How many more Kirk Douglas lines from that episode can I
If, ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in telling us anything about the good, the bad, and the ugly, The Simpsons, The Master,
Oh, sounds like a
Salami,
good night in, doesn't it? Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
The
Couple
Sopranos,
episodes of The Master and about 12 episodes of The Simpsons.
it's a perfect day.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, if you got anything to say about any of that, you know what to do. Find us on the book, the Gram, the Sky, the X,
the Tube.
any of that other fucking nonsense. The Tube.
I don't know. I think YouTube is exempt from
nonsense.
Some of the fucking nonsense.
Okay.
Yeah. It's one of our most. It's the most legitimate of all those platforms.
I agree with that.
Yeah. In that it displays and produces real content.
Exactly. True. True.
That's where I get all the DVD commentaries that put me to sleep every night from YouTube.
It's where you find obscure shit about Friday the 13th, and I'm like, why didn't you tell me about
Good
this?
for making ofs. Yeah, good for good for making ofs.
All right. Or send an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. All right, that's it. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions, Michael Schatz here. I'm from the How Dare You Awards. When you hear us next, why would you pitch a sequel to a couple of perfect movies? I don't know, but that's what we're doing. So we'll be pitching sequels next. Look forward to that. All right. We're done. Say goodbye to everybody, Tom.
God's not on our side, 'cause he hates idiots also.
Perfect ending.
I love the fact that I'm reading this off the IMDb quote page, and they put stars around idiots, presumably because they want you to do Clint's inflection. And I just ignored it.
Like any good actor would.
Yep.
All right. We'll be back, everyone. Thanks for listening.